Hello and welcome everyone to the Confident Chicks conversation. My name is Lakeisha Copley. I am your host, and I'm so very excited today. We have a very special guest in the room with us today. And before we get to her and her incredible journey, I want to go over today's confession. My hands are diligent, therefore it brings me great wealth. And our guest today, her name is Megan. Megan, are you here with us today?
Yes,
All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
absolutely. Well, I am leading a movement of women who care so much about how they feel that they make themselves a priority every day and do something for their health on every level so that they can show up on purpose and truly be sustainably successful and vibrantly healthy. And I do that through the tools of yoga and personal training and mental fitness and really help people to break the cycles of self-sabotage so that they can take control of their life and their health.
So, why do you think sometimes we self-sabotage ourselves? Because I know, like, we don't know that we're sabotaging ourselves, but it just happens. Why do you think that happens?
Well, there's actually a really interesting explanation for why that happens, and it's based in our brain. And so when we are little, when we're being raised by our family of origin, so whoever your caregivers were, maybe mom, dad, auntie, uncle, grandparents, whoever, what they did was model behavior for you. So you watched and learned. And when you were little, your brain was still developing. So we didn't have these filters of understanding that we do now as adults. So we think everything is about us and that everything we're seeing is something that we should be doing too. And so we start modeling the behavior of the people around us. And so we start to practice these different tools to be able to stay in our family or, from an evolutionary point of view, in our tribe, and to stay safe and stay protected, because as a child and as a baby, we're defenseless, right? And so we need to stay in the good books with our parents or whoever's taking care of us. And so we do what they do. And so we learn because we're modeling that behavior and we practice it so much that it becomes hardwired into our brain, into our subconscious mind, and it becomes a self-protective stress response. So how we respond to stressful situations, we actually learned as children. And we practice these different ways of being so much that they became a state of being that they often become our personality traits. And so we tend to be a hard worker, or maybe a procrastinator, or maybe a worrier, or maybe someone who is very attentive to detail, a perfectionist. And so these different habits of self-sabotage are actually wired into our brain. And so that's why they're subconscious. And like you said, most people don't realize they're doing it until we start to become more aware of it, or we start to get frustrated enough that we're like, why is this always happening to me? And then we want to figure out how to change it. And the cool thing is about our brain is that you can change it. You literally can change the way that your brain works through some different tools that help you to literally rewire your brain. So it's a lot deeper than just saying positive affirmations, which are helpful, but those are only on the surface level because they're not affecting your brain and they're not affecting your nervous system. So it's very important in order to make lasting shifts to make these shifts at the level of our neurons, which are our brain, and our nervous system, which is in our body.
So basically, it's kind of like generational because you're watching this growing up, and then somehow you start doing these same things that you saw others do.
100%. And it's interesting because if you think about it and you start to, if you take that perspective and you look at patterns in your own life that maybe have been frustrating to you. Like, for example, one of my clients is she avoids taking action on things, and then that gives her stress because a lot of times if she's not doing it, she's stressed out about the things she's not doing, right? Like for me with my taxes, I like procrastinate on my taxes and all I can think about is my taxes and how I should do my taxes. And so it's like not helping at all. But so with her, we started diving into this and giving her more understanding. And she's like, oh yeah, no, that's what everybody in my family does. We don't talk about uncomfortable stuff. We avoid it at all costs. And so it's interesting because what we tend to notice in ourselves might be something that we notice in our family members and get triggered by sometimes in our family members. And so it's really, it's, you know, by no fault of our caregivers, by no fault of our own, because they were doing their best and we do our best now. And now that we understand, we can begin to shift this and shift the patterns.
So, what are some steps that we can do once we know what our patterns are? How can we like stop this cycle?
Beautiful. Yeah, that's a great question. And that's the first thing, as it is with many different practices and tool sets, is awareness. Right. And these are a little bit sneaky because they're running at below the level of our conscious awareness. So there are things that we tend to do and we don't even realize we're doing it until we notice how we're feeling. And so that's really the key, is to pay attention to how you're feeling throughout the day. Because most people live their life as an out-of-body experience, i.e., they're in their head most of the time. But yeah, your body is constantly communicating with you by way of your emotional state. And so if you find that you're constantly feeling anxiety or feeling like you have to push harder, do more, and go farther, go faster, all of those things, I want you to notice how that feels in your body when you have those thoughts, because that's your nervous system's way of communicating with you. It communicates through the language of emotion. And so we first want to notice in those stressful situations, how are we feeling? And is it how you want to feel? Probably not. Right. So that's first and foremost, is to start to notice patterns in your life. And when you notice one of those patterns, have a look at it in a gentle way, like in a way that you're curious, right? Not in a judgmental way, because if we go right into judgment of ourselves, which we're all really good at, and I'm like excellent at, but I'm working on it, you know, we can tend to be really critical. And so when you notice those patterns, we want to look at it from a place of gentleness. We want to come at it from a place of being compassionate with yourself. And we begin to treat it like a little bit of an experiment of, oh, look, there, that happened again. And how do I feel? I feel tight in my body. I feel sore. I have a pain in my neck. And so starting to look at how it shows up for you and just to be curious about it, because if we go right into judgment, it just feeds that cycle because it's triggering more stress. Because when we're under stress and when we have a dysregulated nervous system, i.e., we're just always going, and we're running on caffeine and cortisol, we're just constantly triggering those cycles without even really realizing it. So noticing the patterns, but then also doing little things throughout the day to pause and check in with yourself and just take a little minute, and not necessarily take a minute to scroll on your phone, but just take a minute to be in your body, to breathe, to shake, to dance, to take your dog out to go pee and just stand there and breathe and wait. And so really just taking mindful moments throughout the day to keep checking in with yourself. Because the interesting thing is that we so often ask everyone else how they're doing. How are you feeling today? What's going on? But yet we don't really very often, until you learn to do it, do that for ourselves. And so that's what this is just becoming a witness to yourself in a really gentle way.
Yeah, because sometimes, like, if you ignore those feelings and then it just keep piling and piling and piling until then you just explode. You're like, whoa, what happened?
100%. It's like when you're boiling a big pot of water,
Yeah.
right? And we put the lid on because we want it to get really hot. And it's kind of, that's the way we are too, because we want to contain our energy, right? And so we have our body that helps us to do that. But if we constantly have these stress and these frustrations, and it starts to get all boiled up, and we get frustrated, we get angry, or we get upset, or we get sad, and so that's all boiling. And if we're not just like sliding the lid over a little bit to let some of the steam out, like to do some breathing, meditation, prayer, dance, whatever, to let a little steam off, to let some of the stress out, then the pot will boil over, right? And that's when we have a blowout or a meltdown, or we lose it. And then of course we can learn from that, but a lot of times we overreact to the situation because we're at a 10, right? If the pot's boiling at a 10, we want to turn the heat down, take the lid off, and do things to keep coming back down so that we're at a more even keel, so that when something happens, we don't spike it through the roof, right? We're able to handle it and then come back to a place of center or connected awareness. So you come back to yourself.
Yeah, because I know sometimes, like when you scroll like that, and people around you, and they just look at you, but they don't know that it's been going on like for a couple of hours or a couple of days. They don't know that you really been under all this pressure. They just see the outburst of everything.
Right. And they're like, whoa, what did I say? I literally just said like,
I just
that's
walk in the room.
yeah, exactly. Like, oh, cute dress. And you're like, because, it's, yeah, like you said, it's maybe been happening for days or hours, or some people it's been happening for weeks or months or years or
Yeah,
decades. Right. And so this
exactly.
is the kind of stuff that we're not really taught about, because we're taught about the like, the outer stuff of wearing things that make us feel confident and doing things and holding our body in a way that makes us feel confident. But that's just on the outer layer, right? And so when we come to a place of being aware of yourself and knowing who you are and what feels good to you, what upsets you, that's where true confidence comes from, because that's really, it's emanating from that place of like owning how powerful you are, owning
Yeah,
how magical you are, because that's really what we're getting at, right? Is like, that's what we want. That's the magnetic quality and that's what you see in somebody who's truly confident is that they are just so in their body that it just shines out of them, right? They've done the work to clear all the stuff. And, you know, to continue with the analogy, they take the lid off and they let the steam out, and then they just come to that nice boiling simmer, right? And they're hot, they're like amazing and they're powerful, but they're not boiling over and they're not trying to get things boiling. That's just who they are.
yes, exactly. And so, how do when getting rid of all of that clutter, how does that bring abundance to our lives?
Because when we are in that centered state, then you are in a place of calm. So when we're under the cycles of self-sabotage and we're stressed out, we're in a different part of our brain. And so we're at a very uh, a scattered frequency in our body, in our heart, and the rhythms of our body. And we're under stress and we tend to be fearful and resistant and doubtful and shame. And so those are all tight, constrictive emotions, sometimes called negative emotions because they vibrate lower on the frequency scale. But yet, when we do this work and take the lid off, it activates a different part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is your calm, your creative, your confident part of you. And that allows your nervous system to begin to settle. And when it settles, when it's not contracted and binded, like in that, when we're stressed out, when it settles, it expands. And when our nervous system expands, it changes how we feel, because we're grounded, we're centered, we're ready, right? We're ready. We're in a place of openness, of softness, of trust, of truth. And so that elevates how we're feeling. So then it brings us into a more aligned state with our vision, right? And we're embodying the more aligned emotions of our vision. I call those our North Star emotions. And those are the ones that, we get to live into on a daily basis. And so when we're in that expansive state in your nervous system, then you are in a place where you are attracting opportunities because you're literally open to receive. You're not constricted and tight, you're open. And things are flowing to you because you're looking for them. You're looking for possibility. You're looking for opportunities. You're open to miracles. You're open to receiving all of that. So you are a vibrational match for the abundance and what you're looking for, because you've done the inner work for your nervous system, right? And so a lot of times people talk about like, okay, think the thoughts. And it's important to think the thoughts, but it has to be, those thoughts have to be thought from a place of safety in your body. Otherwise you're going to repel them, right? Otherwise you might be thinking like, I'm abundant, here I go, look at me attracting all the, in your body you're like tight and closed off and shut off and like, no, it's never going to happen. And having that, there's a resistance,
Yeah,
right? And so there's
exactly.
an internal misalignment. Therefore the universe is like, well, I don't know, she's saying she wants it, but at the same time, look at her, she's like all blocked off, you can't even let anything in. So that's how it allows more. And then when we're doing the work to stay at the steady state, not only do we attract more, but we're able to hold it. And that's very important, because if we don't believe that we're deserving of it and we don't stay in a place of alignment with it, then guess what happens? We freak out, we get stressed, and then who comes back in? All of those patterns of self-sabotage, and then
Right.
gone.
Yeah, and then you just start doing the same thing, or you start putting off. Like I know sometimes you say, "Oh, I'll get to it tomorrow," and then, "Oh, I'll do it tomorrow." "Oh, I'm gonna wait till Monday. I'm gonna start this Monday. I'm gonna have a brand new start."
Right?
Next thing
Yeah.
you know, a whole year.
No kidding, right? You're like, oh, Monday, next month, next quarter, next year, next decade. It's like later. And that's why I call it November, right? I don't know when people are going to be listening to this, but November, I call it November because like so many people in my world, because I'm in health and fitness, a lot of people are like, oh, I'll get to it in the new year. But no better time to feel better and to feel strong and feel grounded and feel confident than now, right? And it
Right.
doesn't have to be this big overhaul of everything in your life, but it's these taking these little power pauses throughout the day, throughout the week, so that you can drop back in, come back to the place of center, right? And do it in a way that's playful and fun so that you're feeling better now. And then it affects everything that we've been talking about. It affects how you show up, how you talk to your partner, to your kids, to your team member, all of it.
So, what is your mindful strength method?
So mindful strength is a combination of the tool set that we're speaking about here, which is called mental fitness. So mental fitness is learning to strengthen the muscles of your mind to do everything that we're talking about. So catch yourself in the patterns, take control of your mind and focus it on where you want to go and move from a place of deep connection to who you truly are, right? A divine being having a human experience. So we come from that place of alignment and power. So it integrates that tool set with breath work so that we can continually regulate your nervous system so that you can stay strong and resilient, attract all the things and hold them. So it's really a brain and body based approach to living a vibrant, healthy life and truly taking control of your thoughts and your energy.
That's so awesome. So, how long have you been working with women?
I've been working with women since I started working, but specifically I've been working with entrepreneurs and mostly women. I mean, I do have male clients and I have male students that come to my sessions, but specifically been focusing with other female entrepreneurs for about 5 years.
Wow. And so, how do you find helping them with your method? How does that help them in their entrepreneur journey?
Well, it really helps them by learning to use their mind as a powerful tool, like we've been talking about, because otherwise it's going to be all over the place and running the show. And keep their keep their body strong and healthy so that they are energized and they can show up fully in their life and their business, because really the most important asset in the business is the leader of the business, is the CEO of the business, because they're in charge of the direction and the health of it. And so a lot of people will focus on the other activities that need to be done, but really when the CEO, when she focuses on herself, then it affects everything else in a really positive way. And so keeping her mind clear, her body healthy, and her nervous system really open and expansive, and really, because there is so much stress in running a business, is learning how to learn the cues that we've been talking a little bit about and continually just keep coming back, cultivating connected awareness, keep coming back over and over. And it's really it's a practice, and it's not a once a week practice, it's a everyday practice. And I'm not talking about like doing an hour of yoga. I'm talking about being aware of where our mind wants us to go, because our mind loves problems, it loves stress, because what it's focusing on is survival. And everything, not everything, most like 98% of the things that we do as entrepreneurs are, could be perceived as threatening to the brain. Like, why would you go on why would you go on a podcast? Who's going to listen to it? What are they going to say about it? Like all that stuff. Because your brain,
Yeah.
if you pay attention to it, that's what it's doing, right? Because it's only referencing back experiences that you've had that were logged as positive or negative. And so if there was an incident when you were a little kid and you talked in front of people and then somebody in the back row laughed at you, like that's what your brain is constantly referencing. And so it's really what my work does through mindful strength method is truly keeping them as aligned on every level, right? Physically through the yoga and the exercise, mentally through the mental fitness, emotionally through the nervous system work, so that they can truly attract more abundance and increase their impact. But ultimately be holistically successful, because it's not just from a financial perspective, which is, of course, we know is very important, but success has multiple factors to it. And in order for it to be sustainable, I believe that we need to be healthy and happy as well as productive.
And it's so important to be able to filter all those thoughts that go through your mind. And I think a lot
Mhm.
of times we engage with the wrong thoughts and not the right thoughts.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And the crazy thing is that on average, they say we have anywhere between 60 to 70,000 thoughts every day. And most of them were ones we had yesterday. And approximately 90% of them are negative, because that's what our brain is focusing on, is survival. And it's not about like, oh, like focusing, the Buddha said, in a field of 1,000 flowers, all we remember is the snake. And so we don't
Yeah.
remember the wonderful things because they're not harmful. Like, we remember the potentially problematic things because that's what your brain is all about. But that's why we tend to get really looped into the negative thoughts, like you said. And so it is a practice, and it is because once we start to learn to catch these different characters in our head and start to really become aware of their tricks and, the lies that they tell us, then we have that a leg up on them, because otherwise they're just running the show and we don't even realize it, right? But once people start to do this work of starting to witness these little patterns in their life and where they get frustrated and where they feel like they're quote unquote stuck, then we get a lot of clarity, and then you can start to make shifts. And it doesn't take much, but it really is, the foundation of it is awareness.
Yes, it definitely is just being in control of your mind because your mind is so powerful. It can make you do anything and can stop you from doing things. It's just being in control of that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's one of the most challenging things to do.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's one of the most rewarding things to do. And it's really quite interesting because mental fitness that we've been talking about, it really parallels beautifully with the yoga practice, because that's what we do in yoga, is we use all the different tools to learn to control our mind, because either your mind can be your greatest tool or your most challenging opponent, right? And it's a dance. It's a dance that we constantly are playing with. And a lot of times people look at yoga and they just think, oh, it's nice. You get flexible, you get strong, you might get a nice butt at the same time. But what we're doing is, yeah, you get all that. But what we're doing is evolving who we are through the poses, through the practice. Because when you show yourself that you can do a pose, you can do hard things. When you wobble out of a pose and you come back, you can get up and try again. You're resilient. You can hold your focus for like a split second and then come back again, right? And it's a practice. And so it's really a practice in evolving who we are through the different tools. And then, because that evolution happens within you, when you get off the yoga mat and you go into the office, or you open your laptop or what have you to create content, then you are still that same person. It's not who you are only on the yoga mat, that's who you are in your life. And so it really becomes a transformational tool set that goes a lot deeper than, yeah, I can touch my toes and I can put my leg in funny places, but like that doesn't really matter. And what it matters is, are you happy?
Yeah,
That's what really matters.
definitely. Definitely. So if someone wanted to get in contact with you and to sign up for your services, where can they find you? Where can they go?
Well, if they want to learn a little bit more about what we've been talking about, I have a free audio training that's called From Anxious to Amazing. And it's a 3-part mini series that really dives deep into what we've been talking a little bit about today. So they can go to giftfrommegan.com and grab that free audio training. And then if you want to come and hang out and learn more from me, I'm on Instagram quite a bit, and you'll see me dancing and with my dog and all sorts of fun stuff. And so on Instagram, my handle is I am Megan Nolan.
It has been such a pleasure speaking with you, and it's been so insightful. Thank you so much for coming on. If you have one last thing that you wanted to share with our listeners, one last piece of advice to sum up everything, what would that be?
That you are far more powerful than you give yourself credit for. And when we drop into that awareness and you let that land, and you notice if that lands for you, and right away, if that little committee in your head wants to start squawking and saying no, 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 then just notice that too, right? And that's what this work is all about, is just coming back to that awareness that you are more powerful than you give yourself credit for. And when we can live from that place, it really is you tapping back into your heart, which is your direct connection to the present moment and to God or universe or nature or whatever word lands for you. That's when we come back to that place of presence and power, that's when we really tap into your true potential.
That is so true. And it's just about being present and also knowing that you can do it despite those voices or those fears or whatever is holding you back, just knowing that you can do whatever you set out to do. And so thank you for sharing that with us and
You're
reminding us
welcome.
of our greatness.
Thank you for having me. You're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in and listening. Bye bye.
Bye bye.